There is a time in every woman's life when she wearies, not of bitterness, but of clarity. Weary of pursuing what does not want to be pursued. It's a still point of transition, a holy stop, where she starts to wonder not, what more can I do? But instead, what if the power in this is in what I let go? Suppose that true seduction lies not in pursuing, but in being present. Not in attempting more, but in holding still. Not in demonstrating her value, but in exuding it. This is the message for the woman who is tired of convincing and ready to start being, who is finished pushing connections and is now opting to call forth desire, not through effort, but through essence. Look, she no longer wants to be the one who demands, but the one who attracts others, not with noise, but with depth. Because real attraction cannot be stalked and shouted for. It has to be summoned. It rises organically when there is emotional grace, tranquil confidence, and the unspoken power of a woman who truly knows herself. In this place of interior mastery, something primal stirs. Stoicism, frequently misconstrued as emotional numbness, really has a deeply feminine truth. Self-mastery is not suppression, it is refinement. It's emotional sovereignty. As Seneca eloquently wrote, mastering oneself is the greatest power of all. And when that mastery is no longer a concept but a state of being, when it becomes your look, your breath, your silence, it makes a difference. Your arrival starts to talk before your lips have ever moved. You're no longer as much of a person and more of a symbol. As Carl Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols, the male mind is drawn to the female by nature as a symbol of mystery, intuition, and emotional power. That is, when a woman inhabits her presence, she is unforgettable, not for what she does, but for who she is. Men don't fall in love with bodies. They fall in love with feelings, with the way they feel when a woman regards them as if she is looking at something that nobody else can see. And this look, this feeling echo, cannot be replicated. It is born of self-possession, of the still magnetic quiet of a woman who does not pursue her man, but simply exists. It is this that we must transcend the surface-level tricks and master the deeper art. How to evoke desire without chasing it. How to stroke a man's ego, not by flattery, but by intrigue. How to become an elusive challenge that stays in his head, not for what you say, but for the way you make him feel long after you've left. Most women attempt to impress, but those that leave an impression speak with purpose, and even more compellingly, with silence. As Epictetus so put it, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In love, that is turned gold. You're on a date, and he utters something vague, maybe even slightly insulting. A reactive woman expounds, defends, or overcompensates. A stoic woman, though, she hesitates. She glances at him, not coldly but calmly. She smiles, just enough to be sensed, and when she speaks, it is measured, brief, intentional. That little pause, one breath of quiet, is stronger than 1,000 words, because it conveys one unmistakable message. I am not swayed from my core. She does not yield to the moment. She claims it. And that, more even than beauty, more even than words, is what holds sway. She is the sort of woman who leaves emotional scuffs, not as a result of what she speaks so much as because of what she makes him feel, and that peace arises from self-reflection, from continually asking herself, am I doing this out of need or out of choice, out of fear or out of trust? A woman who lives from that space doesn't have to manipulate, doesn't have to pursue. Her mere presence, the way she looks, the cadence of her speech, already speaks something much more powerful than any neckline or compliment. Authentic feminine presence doesn't compete, doesn't attempt to please, doesn't attempt to fill gaps. It holds itself as an inner pillar, and that center is magnetic due to its rarity. And rarity intrigues mystery, doesn't reside in silence. It resides in knowing when not to utter everything, when a woman imbues the principles of stoicism. Something shifts in her speech as well. She no longer talks to appease. She talks to reveal awe, to insight, but never to make up for shortages. He doesn't explain too much. She doesn't explain away her feelings. And when she does permit herself vulnerable, she does so from will, not from flood of emotion. That is the distinction of a woman who travels. And a woman who touches one acts from the need to be known the other, from awareness of what her presence already evokes. That's why on this journey, emotional discipline is not repression. It's alchemy. It is the capacity to take every emotion and turn it into something that furthers your, and if you are desire, you contain it through your eyes. If you are angry, you turn it into potent silence. If you feel tenderness, you deliver it with beauty, without fear. And that sweet woman is power, the kind of power that doesn't shout, that doesn't command, that doesn't chase, but waits and invites others to come to you. Carl Jung wrote in The Dynamics of the Unconscious, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What if seduction is not so much about the other, but about you? About how deeply you can know yourself, and from their provokement feel it when they're with you. Maybe they can't articulate it, but they sense it, and they get pulled not only to you, but how they feel when they're around you, confused, excited, hungry for more. Because a woman who doesn't respond automatically, who doesn't get derailed by any stimulus, is a woman who becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability seduces. Seneca wrote, "The greatest freedom is to be the master of oneself." And when a woman speaks with emotional intention, without anxiety or need, what she's really saying is, I am free, I don't need to trap you, I'm simply allowing you to see me. Carl Jung, in The Psychology of the Transference, said that in every human interaction, unconscious elements are projected. In other words, you're not just conversation, you're evoking internal states in the other. And if you understand how to use that with refinement, you can make a man feel powerfully attracted without him knowing why. A woman who controls her emotional vocabulary, doesn't open herself rashly, doesn't explain too much, doesn't have to tell him everything she feels in order to be understood. Because when she glances, when she's not talking, when she uses a slow speech of a sentence full of subtext, something within him is woke up. And that is what he doesn't forget. What makes a woman irresistible isn't what she says, it's what she makes him feel with what she says. Imagine you're in front of him. He expects you to act like most, to laugh too much, to try, to please, to follow the script. But you don't. You speak with pauses, with a firm gaze in a low voice. And when you say something, you do it like it's a secret. Only he is worthy of hearing. That is emotional seduction. And stoicism is the path that teaches you not to talk from anxiety, not to feel silence out of discomfort, not to search for approval. In order to avoid rejection, a stoic woman speaks when she wishes to share, not when she feels the need to fill silence. And that detail makes all the difference. Jung said in Psychological Types that every individual radiates a psychic energy that touches the emotional space of others, and women with focused energy, with clear language, stirs something deep inside men. Admiration, desire, and most of all, curiosity. Because a woman who doesn't explain everything about herself, who answers with well-measured vagueness, becomes a mystery. And mystery is the nourishment of desire. Now take notice. Mystery is not coldness. It's not about pretending to be distant or disinterested. It's about playing with what is said, about expressing emotionally, without being too blatant about giving him an emotion he can't define. And that's exactly why he wants to feel it again. Emotional language consists of three key elements: a soft, confident, and slow tone, a steady gaze with a touch of ambiguity and intention, not to please, but to awaken something within him. When you speak to a man, don't explain everything. Don't give him maps, give him signs, small phrases with emotional weight that leave doors open, because what is completely offered is no longer wanted. be like a poem that won't be read all at once, but is sensed from the very first line, a lone phrase said. Low after a pause can have more influence than a whole speech, particularly when heavy with purpose and connotation. For instance, instead of saying, "I really like you," you could just regard him and say, "There's something about you," if find it difficult to overlook. That line doesn't endear him outright, but it does lead him to believe it opens up an inner question, and that is irresistible. Most women attempt to gain affection by speaking more, revealing more, giving more. But what is really seductive is giving less, with greater intent. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, the quality of your thoughts holds sway over the quality of your life. Similarly, for your words, the emotional quality of your phrases determines the kind of man you will entice. Speak as if every word had a well-designed emotion, not to make him believe something, but to make him feel something he can't account for. And if there's something men never forget, it's how they felt around you, not because of what you've done, but because of what you aroused with your words, your vibes, your stare. A woman who can command emotional language never has to wonder, do you like me? She knows it, and she firms it with silence, with little phrases, with lots of pauses, where the desire must grow quietly. And if it's the right moment, you can use soft statements too, with double-edged emotional meaning, something like, "I don't know what it is about you, but my body does." The phrase doesn't require explanation. The images tase, and so does the feeling. Jung in the ego and the unconscious says that his strongest experiences are not clearly understood. They transform us from the inside out, and that is precisely what occurs when a woman speaks from her emotional core. She doesn't speak. She keeps on resonating inside him, because real power isn't in saying everything, it's in knowing when to speak, how to speak, and most of all, when not to say anything. That is the alchemy of subtext, that is the elegance of emotional mastery, and that, dear lady, is the essence of someone unforgettable. There are sentences that are not merely words. They are emotional cues, open doors to the male. Unconscious when uttered from the core of an emotionally conscious woman with self-restraint and cunningly discreet agenda. They have the power to tag a man's emotional memory for life. These sentences aren't uttered to persuade or impress. They are uttered like someone skipping a stone across a lake, fascinated that the waves will ultimately penetrate to the depths. They don't yearn for a momentary response. They seek to leave a mark, which gets stronger with time and becomes irresistible. The initial phrase is, "Dear, there's something about you that throws me off center. I don't even know what it is." If he wanted. Tone is everything. Here it must not be sounding practiced or calculated. It must emerge in a flash of laughter, of playfulness, of emotional closeness, uttered with a faint smile, like someone tossing a soft provocation. This phrase does something unusual. It emotionally unbalances him, because you give something and take beat it around the bush at the same time in symbols of transformation. Jung said that what does not become conscious manifests as fate. And that's precisely what this sentence does. You bring to the surface something he didn't know was going on. And now that he knows, he can't help but think of the thing itself. It's not that you lose concentration. It's that now he needs to verify it. Don't say it by message. Don't use it to praise him if you're not centered emotionally. This sentence only holds if you know that you're playing from center, not from the desire to get attention. The third sentence is, if he kissed you. Now I know you wouldn't be able to resist. You're not asking for a kiss. You're not even saying that you will kiss him. You're asserting, you're stating an inner fact. You're taking emotional charge of the moment, and you make him think about it. You make him feel it. But you don't move this line. Have to be spoken with presence, with a steady gaze, in a low voice, following a conversation full of emotional depth. They have no power at all. But if you use them from your center feeling, you don't need anyone but deciding to ignite emotion, then they're art. A woman can learn lines. Anyone can say them, but only a woman with emotional presence can make those lines vibrate inside him for days, weeks, even years, because what really remains in memory is not the words, but the impression it left behind. And that impression is constructed with details. A firm stare, a hesitation before speaking, a heavy breath after having spoken. The precise tone that leaves him in doubt, whether it was a challenge, a confession, or a dream. Jung wrote of feminine archetypes as inner forces that function below conscious thought, and a woman who is rooted in her emotional power to her peace, to her command of the moment, captures those archetypes. She is no longer a woman. She is a symbol, and symbols, as he told us, are not gotten. They are felt, and what is felt deeply is sought. So this is not about the words, it's about you, the woman who speaks them. Your tone, your center, your invisible power. It's about no longer being in the vibration of pursuing, but in the energy of challenging, letting. The words become tools of your magnetism, not your deficiency. These lines are not shortcuts, they are instruments. But you are the fire that ignites them. And when you learn to speak with intention from your peace, from your glance, you are no longer just another woman. You become an emotional event. And men don't forget events. They pursue what they can't explain. They crave what makes them feel special, challenged, and emotionally stirred. That is the magic. It's not what you say, it's where you're speaking from. And the dear one is what makes you unforgettable. A woman can have presence, intelligence, even emotional beauty. But if she acts from the wrong place, the magic breaks. Attraction is not just about what you do, it's about the energy behind what you do. And this is where many women unconsciously sabotage their own power. One of the most common mistakes is acting out of deficiency, from the need to be liked in order to be selected, in order to feel validated. That energy is felt. It's not said, but it's conveyed, a gesture that appears too eager, a message that is sent without reflection, a phrase that is spoken just to verify something. And when he feels that need, his longing starts to wane, because men don't want what pursues them, they want what tests them emotionally. A man will feel pity for an emotionally drained woman, but pity does not ever produce desire. Real attraction is not born from turmoil or emotional unrest. It springs from contrast. There is great strength in a woman who feels intensely yet controls when, where, and how much of it she shows. The decision is not to suppress her feelings, but to reign over them. It is emotional magnetism in its rawest form. When a woman bears herself with intent and consciousness, she demands respect and desire. The woman who overfills each instant with unbridled emotion, pouring her heart out without respite or screening, only generates befuddlement that obscures attraction and numbs connection. Desire is hungry for mystery, rhythm, and harmony, not emotional excess. This artful balance is where power resides. One of the most insidious but deeply corrosive things a woman can do is to speak too much, to fill every silence, to explain every feeling, to justify every emotional surge. Silence is not your enemy, it is your best friend. It is in the quiet that tension is created. In the pause, your tranquility is uncovered, and your presence starts to speak more clearly than words ever will. Talking without rhythm or purpose is like music without tempo. Dull, draining, and ultimately no room for him to ever really hear himself. In attraction dancing, it is not so much what you say that counts, but the feeling space you hold for him to feel himself more deeply. Nervousness, neediness, or impulsiveness in dialogue undermine this subtle dynamic because they overwhelm instead of welcome. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be centered, completely being in your presence, talking with intention, and always keeping in mind the deepest truth. What a man really wants is not your words, but how you make him feel about himself when he's with you. There is a type of power that is beyond words, strength, and coercion. Carl Jung described the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your true self, as one of integrating your shadow, your emotions and impulses without denial. Men don't fall in love because a woman tries hard to be liked. They fall in love because when they are with her, they feel different about themselves, more alive, more desirable, more curious to discover the mysteries that lie behind her calm exterior. And so the next time you're wondering what to say, how to behave, or which approach to take, recall this. There are no magic words without a magical woman standing behind them. And magic is not accidental. It comes from the everyday commitment to inner work, the choosing not to respond impulsively, not to dramatize, and not to pursue what does not value you. She knows that what is meant for her shall arrive, naturally attracted by her energy, without being begged for or coerced. She has developed an energy so powerful, so cultured, so totally honest, that only the truth is willing to remain.